Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to those who are our state representatives. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I'm Ray Hart. I'm the Executive Director with the Council of the Great City Schools. The Council is a coalition of 78 of the nation's largest central city school districts, and all of our member districts have been focused on wisely investing our ESSER dollars to address the impact of the pandemic on our schools and communities. In particular, we have focused on recovering from the pandemic's influence on student learning outcomes. We have numerous examples from across our membership of the types of investments that have directly impacted our students and families. I am pleased this afternoon to introduce Superintendent Eric Gordon and members of his team to share how they invested their ESSER funds at the district and the school level. Superintendent Gordon was appointed CEO in June 2011 after serving as the Chief Academic Officer in Cleveland for 4 years. Superintendent Gordon is currently the longest serving urban school superintendent in our member district, from across our member districts. He is responsible for the leadership and daily management of Cleveland's 35,600 students. In July 2012, he led a citywide coalition to develop the Cleveland Plan, which has resulted in dramatic improvement in academic performance over the last decade, including a 29-point gain in graduation rates to a record 80.9%. Following years of decline in post-secondary enrollment for CMSD students, despite the increase in graduation rates, Mr. Gordon then led a citywide coalition bringing Say Yes to Education to Cleveland that for the next 25 years will make CMSD students eligible for full tuition scholarships when they graduate. This past year, Cleveland was the fastest growing urban school district in the state of Ohio and among the fastest growing school districts in the state. Among his many awards, CEO Gordon received the Green Garner Award from the Council of the Great City Schools in 2016, distinguishing him as a top urban educator of the year, which is the highest national honor for an urban school superintendent. So among his many awards, we're pleased to introduce Eric Gordon and his team from Cleveland Municipal School District. Eric?
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with you today. Today with me, I'm really pleased to have our Chief of Schools, Lisa Farmer-Cole, and one of our incredible principals, the principal of Memorial Pre-K-8 School, Maria Dinkins. I'm going to start, I know we're running a little behind, and I also have to go to City Council right from here, so we're going to tighten this up even further. But I'm going to start with just 2 quick slides that are there for us. Great. So if we can skip on to the first one, just to share how we came out of the pandemic. So our team of our school-based educators and our district-based educators really kind of made a pact when we were in the shutdown period that we were not going to return to quote unquote normal or business as usual. So instead, we wrote this vision for learning as we plan to emerge from the post-pandemic world. And I'm just going to read it briefly because we feel like it is just super impactful. So first of all, for us, this is equity work. And so we're in pursuit of a more fair, just, and good system of education. We want each of our learners, and in our organization, we want that to be both our scholars and their educators, to be individually and collectively presented with academically or intellectually complex tasks. We don't say rigor because if you asked every person on this call their definition of rigor, we would get hundreds of different definitions of rigor. And if you ask kids the definition of rigor, they just say it means it's too hard. But a complex task is something we can all describe. And so we use the language of an academically complex task. Those tasks, in our opinion, have to be worth productive struggle. You got to want to figure them out. You got to want to try and try again, research, do a micro lesson, work with your team. So they have to be worth it for all of our learners, our kids and adults. And then there has to be authentic opportunities to demonstrate their work and their learning. And that includes both academic content and also the transferable skills that they'll use in other projects and in other settings as they move on to high school and into the world of work and college. And finally, it should be fun. It should be a joyful and adventurous environment. And so we came out of the pandemic with this vision just clearly in front of us. And what Maria and Lisa and I today want to do is just to show you a few ways that we're using ESSER funds to try to make this vision come to life. And so if we can move to the next slide. So it says just a sampling because when we were brainstorming, we had a much longer list for the 20-ish minutes we have. But we have made a bet in Cleveland that if we invest very much like you heard from our colleagues in the state of Alabama on things like out of school time, summer learning experiences, things of that nature that deepen and broaden the rich learning environments for young people in the context of rigorous academic content, that we can move achievement and that we can use the ESSER dollars to jumpstart this vision and then build a bridge to sustainability long term. And so I'm going to just ask maybe Maria to start first because she is at Memorial School. It is on Cleveland's northeast side. It is a high poverty, all African American student school that has gotten outsized results. And largely, I would argue, and Maria will correct me if she thinks I'm wrong, because they've made some of these bets of saying, we're not going to just talk about a vision, we're going to bring it to life. So Maria, I'd like you to just pick a couple of items off of this list that you feel most passionate about at Memorial, and just tell us a little about what it is and what it looks like in Memorial School.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, we have been, I'm very lucky here at Memorial, have a wonderful staff and wonderful families, who are willing to try new things. We started the 0 and 9 period club encores, we call them, or encore clubs. And, at first, everyone was like, are kids really going to sign up for this? And we've seen, just really great participation. We open it up to just students in 5th through 8th grade, but we fill up every session. Students are learning to play musical instruments. We have art club, we have a choir, we have physical fitness club. Students have learned wrestling, proper wrestling. So those are all things that are happening during our 9th period of the day, which is an extra period attached to the end of our school day. Our out of school time is very popular. We actually have 180 students currently enrolled in our out of school time, and that's nearly half of our student body. We open that up to the entire student body, pre-K through 8th grade, and they're learning Spanish, they're doing boxing, cheerleading, dance, African drumming, and they're also receiving academic tutoring daily. So we've just seen, some really nice narrowing of some learning gaps, due to this extra tutoring. And also thanks to the $150 per student that we receive from ESSER funding, we've been able to, pay additional teachers to tutor at lunchtime. And to order additional supplemental materials. And my admin team and I were actually able to travel to New York this past summer to learn more about responsive classrooms. And we've brought back great ideas for morning meetings, which we implemented this year. And we've seen just a really nice improvement in our social and emotional learning thanks to that. And also better implementation of PBIS, which has reduced suspensions, reduced time in the planning center. And, we've just seen, teachers more willing to build those relationships with scholars and really focus on, how students are feeling. And they're more willing to talk about those things, which will have a positive effect on behavior, thus having a positive effect on our academics.
So Maria, you mentioned the 0 and 9th period. You have a 9th period.
Yes.
So if you could share a little more about what that means. And also, you talked a lot about art and music and phys ed and clubs and boxing and things that there are some people out there would say those are not the right things to get academic achievement. And yet you have results. What's the connection to all of those and why you picked those? And first of all, what is 9th period?
9th period is an extra period at the end of our day. We used to just have 8 periods, and we're in early school. So we do start very early at 7:35 in the morning. And then 9th period starts at 2:05 and goes until 2:55. So we have the best art teacher in the district, I would say. But she does a really great job of incorporating writing and learning about art history and things like that while she's doing art club. And I actually worked with her at my previous school in Cleveland, and I can remember giving her that feedback years ago that she still uses to this day. So, all of our teachers really take ownership of our test scores and, teaching our students to read and write and teaching them about numeracy. Our music teacher does a great job with that as well. And even when you go into our gym teacher has a word wall, so he's teaching the students, different fitness related or physical education related vocabulary. So I think just, the incorporation, between the subject areas really helps.
Thank you, Maria. Lisa, you look at it from the systems level, and you're the chief of schools, so you're looking at it from the implement systems level. Which of these might you pick out and lift up, and why do you think it's important for our ESSER recovery?
So I think a great place to start would be bullet point number 1 around our shift in using project-based learning across all schools, no matter what type, no matter what grade level, and thinking about when we initially when we were actually in the pandemic, when we started our summer learning experience, we wanted kids to actually have an experience where they could finish their learning, have some enrichment activities, and then in the afternoon have engagement, some of the camp type activities. But I'll speak to the enrichment because it connects very much so to the project-based learning. So we sat down and thought about how do we focus on intellectually complex tasks and bring that to life from our vision? How do we ensure that all students are exposed to rich academic content? So we created interdisciplinary projects with specific focus areas, humanities, STEM, et cetera. So what we did that summer was to pilot how we brought all of these content areas together and gave students opportunities to learn in various different ways. They didn't learn in silos, just reading, math, et cetera. We bridged them together so that it was fun. They were real life. They were connected to relevant pieces of students and what they did every day. One of the projects that we provided to students was called I Love the Land. And students were able to think about how they could improve their city, improve where they lived through various content areas. So one of our student groups thought about improving the land through the improvement of our city's recycling plan. So they had to learn about ecology. They had to learn about city government. And we had second through middle schoolers talking about how they could improve citywide systems to improve Cleveland. So that was the starting point through our summer learning experience. And now we've broadened that and we allow schools across the district to engage in projects. They can either create them themselves, but we've also partnered with Defined Learning. So we have a bank of projects that teachers can select from. Eric and I were actually out at Memorial and we were jurors to one of the projects in a 6th grade class, because not only do students engage in projects, but they also receive feedback from people in the community, including internal stakeholders within CMSD. So when we think about bringing to scale rich academic content through complex tasks, we've done that through project-based learning starting 3 years ago in our summer learning experience. And now every school has the opportunity to participate as well.
And for those who don't know, we are the great state of Cleveland, Ohio. There is Ohio and there is Cleveland. And so we love the land here. One of my favorites that I remember from the first year is our middle school Love the Land, where each of our sites evaluated and gave a report card on then Mayor Jackson's Plan 2020 for Cleveland is a great example of it. Maria, your school does a lot of the PBL work. Lisa talked about us coming out and being jurors. I've been there a number of times. Can you give us just a real life example of something that you've observed that you know is making academic impact when your students are doing their PBLs and their demonstrations?
Sure. I've just seen, a real improvement. I've been here 7 years now. So the kids who are in 8th grade, I've known them since they were little. And I've just seen a real increase in their confidence and their speaking ability and their presentation ability. They're much, more comfortable with technology now. They use that clever touch better than I do. They're very confident, and I love seeing that. Because I can remember when they first started, they would talk like this, and, they were afraid to make eye contact. And now we actually, next school year will be an official PBL school. And I think that's largely thanks to Mrs. Baldassar, one of my teachers, who is, she's the PBL queen. And we actually had a group of our 8th graders present PBL to my staff at a staff meeting and just talked about how beneficial they thought it was, how they feel like it's preparing them for high school and is preparing them for college. And I really wasn't sure if my AAP, which, for those of you not in Cleveland, that's our academic achievement plan that we really just, it runs our entire school year. I wasn't sure if it would pass, and it passed. I think we only had 2 teachers who voted no. So it was, it passed with flying colors. And I think that's largely in part to, those 8th graders coming in and just showing the skills that they've learned over the past few years.
So Lisa and Maria, this is a seminar around how we've leveraged ESSER to make these things happen, but that also means ESSER is going to go away. So what have you done? What have we done at the school level and at the district level towards the sustainability of some of these kinds of things with our ESSER funds?
Well, we know that the project-based learning, and happy to hear about all of the extended work that Maria is doing. We knew it was a way to accelerate learning, and there was so much time lost with kids that it was something that we wanted to focus on. So we've built cohorts of teachers around this work through our communities of practice. So it's a train the trainer in a sense, where we're using some of so in Cleveland, we had what's called Excellence in Teaching Awards, where we identify teachers who have evidence of excellent practices. They're nominated, they receive an award. So we started with that cohort to work with them to help build some of these projects, but now they're training others so that we have more and more teachers that are not only buying in, but investing in projects that they know have worked in CMSD. Because we know that in any district, when a teacher sees that a colleague has done it in a school that's next door or across the city, that they'll find similar success in their school. So I think building on those best practices, leveraging our communities of practice, and training our teachers so that this does become sustainable.
And Maria, how do you plan to keep this going as your school-based budget returns to pre-pandemic numbers as it started to do coming into next year?
Well, we made very good use of our ESSER funds. I actually had all of my kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers and all of my intervention specialists, Orton Gillingham trained, so that they're able to really help with some of those early literacy struggles that some of our students have. So I feel like that was really, money well spent, and we'll see the increases in early literacy for years to come because of that. Some of the supplemental materials, like I said, the PD that we've been able to attend, the morning meetings, really, we've just seen the social emotional learning has been so much better this school year, thanks to that. So I really think, we've made the right steps, and all of the early learning literacy and the social emotional things that we've learned will really be sustainable for many, many years.
So I'm hearing a lot about people investment in the communities of practice, using summer learning experience as a prototyping space and a safe space for people, the Orton Gillingham and that sort of thing. What about other investments that you might point to that can create some sustainability, whether it be the PBL work, whether it be for 0 and 9 period? Have you seen other investments, like kind of more one-time investments that you think are going to help continue the work, either at the school or district level?
I think one of the one-time investments, although we are focused on project-based learning, we know that kids need those foundational skills to be successful in literacy, math, numeracy, of course. And one of the one-time investments we've made is in Amira, which is a tutoring program that uses artificial intelligence as a real-time coaching mechanism for students as they're reading. It can be done at any time because it is AI. So we started piloting that in 4 of our schools. But this summer, through our summer learning experience, and Eric talked about that being a prototyping space, we're going to use it in all 22 schools before we ramp it up next year. And we found in the 4 schools that we're using, one being a bilingual school, so students are reading in English and in Spanish and receiving feedback in both languages, that it's having an impact. We don't have concrete numbers, but we are hearing from teachers anecdotally that it is very supportive of students increasing their fluency levels.
I'd like to-
Go ahead,
go
Maria.
ahead.
Sorry, please.
I was going to say, Memorial is one of the schools that's using Amira. In our second grade, we saw in their biweekly Ames Web fluency testing, our teacher has seen really great gains since we've been using Amira.
And I would just point out to our audience too, one of the things we didn't talk much about, but is our shift to a one-to-one technology school district. And we have actually figured out that if we successfully, or when we successfully implement a 4-year equipment cycle for kids and adults and stop having stationary technology content sitting all over the district, it will actually be cheaper in the long run than what we were operating in the past. So that's another place where we've been able to leverage ESSER dollars to get. We're going through that conversion now. We do have to get our adults to realize that you don't need 2 devices to do the same task, but we'll get there. And that's another example. We also spent a great deal of resources, one-time money resources on, if you're going to have a 0 and 9 period for phys ed, art, and music, you also have to have state-of-the-art equipment and materials and resources that will live on past ESSER, as just a couple of examples. We have a question in the chat that I will actually answer about our after-school programs and clubs and sustaining those after ESSER. So separate from ESSER, we have a local public-private partnership here called Say Yes to Education, which brings our city, our county, and the school district, plus a large number of philanthropy together. We are right now actively discussing how the city in particular, which is responsible for recreation services and philanthropy, will help us to continue the out-of-school time content that is not 0 and 9th period. And our mayor and city council have invested a number of their ARPA dollars into education related issues. So it's a great and important question that we haven't yet answered. We used ESSER to stand it up and to show our community the value of it. And then we're coming back to our community now and saying, if we value it, we have to be willing to pay for it. We are just at our time. I want to just give Lisa and Maria each just one kind of closing thought about what ESSER has allowed in enabling your work against our vision that you would want our audience to know. And then I want to share just briefly the impact that we're seeing here in the school district as well. So I'll open to either Lisa or Maria.
Thanks, Maria. I think what ESSER has done is allowed us to be bold and dream big, but at a systems level. And it's not just about a particular school being able to afford 200, 250 kids a program or something that they're able to afford in isolation. It's allowed us to bring things to scale. The example I lifted right before Eric spoke last was about Amira. It's also helped us to bring project-based learning to scale. Another initiative that we've launched is called our Pulse Check tools, where we're able to actually go into schools and see if these things are happening being able to train people and partner with organizations like TNTP to be able to do this. So it allows us to bring things that are working to scale in a consistent way that is very supportive of our kids instead of in pieces and in isolation, school by school. It's really made a difference with that.
What I've noticed is I have a very veteran staff here at Memorial, but I've just been really proud of the new things that they've been willing to try since COVID and with ESSER funds. All of my teachers are much more technology literate, than they once were. They all work really well with their clever touches and are really excited when we have a new training for that. And just the fact that I have, 7th and 8th grade teachers using blended learning and having centers and working with a small group at the front table, that was something you really didn't see before. So, sometimes it's almost like, bad things are a blessing in disguise. But, I'm just really proud of my staff and the new things that they've been willing to try. And, we are definitely seeing the results here at Memorial.
And for our guests, our colleagues here, it is because of one of the teachers at Memorial that we used ESSER funds to put a clever touch in every single classroom in the district. Again, seeing it as a one-time big investment that will pay off. I was judging a demonstration of learning. I was very skeptical of my IT people saying we had to do this until I watched 8th graders who, when they were with us in 6th grade, didn't even have technology, dropping their presentations into OneDrive, going up to the Clever Touch, opening it up, turning around and presenting their demonstrations of learning and using those transferable skills. And I went directly to my board and said, we need this in every single classroom. I'm going to just end with one slide if I'm able, and hopefully I will get this right, just to show that it's working. So hopefully you're seeing rebounding from the pandemic on your screen, and I can see Lisa. Did I get it right? Okay.
You got it right.
So, when we were making this bet last year with our report card, one of my colleagues from another urban district in Ohio had made a double down bet on core literacy and core numeracy and was showing us NWEA scores that looked really, really good. And we were frankly really nervous about whether this is paying off or not. And then our report cards came out. And the report card told us what we already knew. Our kids had really struggled in early literacy. Our graduation rate took a hit, particularly for a poor urban community where kids had to work. But the middle was important, that we had the top rated growth of any urban district in Ohio. And in fact, we're ranked 12th out of 600 districts in growth in the state of Ohio, and also had the largest gap closing for Black, Hispanic, and other groups on our gap closing measure. So we have a lot to do to get to where we want to be, but we are really confident that by shifting a focus to complex tasks that are undergirded by literacy and numeracy, that we and leveraging ESSER funds to bring it to life, that we are in fact doing what we dream to do and what we envision to do. And so with that, I know we're at our time, and I'll turn it back to Dr. Hart. And thank you to the council and CCSSO for inviting us. What could have brought any one of my incredible principals to give you the same thing. So thanks, everyone.